Hi, welcome to the Kindle Chronicles. This is Len Edgerly. Today is Friday, December 4th, and I am recording this episode in Sanibel. We've been here 2 weeks now, and I have a room in the place that we're sharing with Darlene's sister Deb, which I've called the Lenai, L-E-N-A-I, because I've been amused at how screened porches are called lanais here in Florida. Kind of sounds like something coming from Hawaii. But this is a room. I've got a desk and a chair, and I have a new Blue Yeti X microphone that I'm trying out. I'll be curious if you can detect any difference in the quality of the voiceover here. And so it's a lovely little room to record in, and there are curtains covering the windows that I hope gives a little bit of muffling. Otherwise, there's hard walls, so a bit of an echo. My interview this week is with Adam Leeb, CEO and co-founder of Astrohaus. That's a Detroit startup, and it's the creator of the Freewrite Traveler, distraction-free writing keyboard that I've talked about a number of times here on the show. I've got one, and I've been experimenting with it, and I'm very happy with it, and I feel like there's a lot more to learn about it. So I was glad to have a chance to talk to Adam for this week's show. And we'll also have a couple of news items, one involving Amazon Publishing's continued efforts, apparently, to get its books into libraries, some controversy around that I've talked about in the past, and also news of one of the day one products that was introduced in September in Seattle at the preview that I attended, the Echo Frames, which I have been using thanks to listener Jim Jones making his invitation available to me. It's now a full-time product. You can order it. I'll talk about that. And another product which was introduced then did not make the cut and is not going to be continued. I have a tech tip, and I'll tell you who our interview is with next week. I'm excited about it. We'll have a local guest from Sanibel on next week. Let's get started. First up in news, and this is an item received via John Aga. It's a story in The Hill about Amazon Publishing's attempt to distribute ebooks to libraries. Actually, it's coverage of a petition drive, people wanting to force Amazon Publishing to do it. It's the only major publisher, which does not distribute its ebooks to public libraries. The big five all do. But there's been a lot of controversy over it, too, because there has been efforts by the big five publishers to make the terms under which libraries can buy books more onerous and less affordable for the libraries. I've covered that, and it's generated, especially Macmillan, generated a lot of heat. Bradley Metrock took after them, and they backed down after they had proposed tougher terms for the libraries. But meanwhile, Amazon Publishing kind of quietly has never made its books available to libraries at all. And I've spoken out on this, and I've asked for comment from Amazon Publishing. They weren't able to comment, and it's been a bit awkward because it's one of the few times I found myself saying, Amazon, what's up? Wake up. You ought to be having your books in the libraries. So I was pleased because in this story, which was covering the kind of controversy over it, there's actually some information quoting Amazon sources indicating exactly what is happening, or if not exactly in broad terms, what Amazon Publishing is trying to do. And this confirms my own thoughts when I was talking about it probably last summer, that it feels like they're up to something. They're trying to get some way to get their books to libraries, and it's, apparently it's not as simple as just going to Overdrive. I had a sense that something was up. And we can hear, this is an article in The Hill by Rebecca Clark, titled Amazon Under Pressure to Lift Ban on Ebook Library Sales. Here's the key paragraphs that have the information about Amazon. An Amazon spokesperson said the company is in, quote, active discussions with the Digital Public Library of America, DPLA, to make its ebooks available for library distribution. The company expects, quote, to be testing a number of different models early next year, the spokesperson added. Quote, we believe libraries serve a critical purpose in communities across the country, and our priority is to make Amazon Publishing ebooks available in a way that ensures a viable model for authors as well as library patrons, the spokesperson said. Amazon declined to provide details regarding pricing or the lengths of licensing deals it plans to test in 2021. Now, the DPLA was launched in April of 2013, and you may remember I spoke a couple of times with Robert Darnton of Harvard's library system. He was kind of a key mover in getting this thing going, and it was kind of in the wake of the Google Books initiative running up against court opposition, and the Google's plan to distribute all books or make all books available as ebooks was thwarted. And so this Digital Public Library of America kind of rose up as an alternative, a nonprofit that was going to be working with a number of participating libraries. Well, since then, I haven't followed it closely, but in checking their website, they've got a staff, and it's obviously a going concern, and they appear to be making some recent initiatives and making ebooks available to libraries. This seems like a genius partner for Amazon Publishing to work with. It leaves me wondering if Overdrive will have any role in this, because Overdrive handles by far the bulk of ebook delivery by publishers to libraries. I guess it's possible that Amazon has been directly working with a different partner, a nonprofit, and maybe is going to be having a very widespread availability to libraries under, I hope, favorable terms for their books. But this is all in the works at this point. There's a quote in this story from Alan S. Inouye, Senior Director of Public Policy and Government Relations at the American Library Association, saying, it's become significant, and of course everyone understands that Amazon's trajectory for growth is upward, so it's also a concern about having access to even more titles in the future, or rather not having access to even more titles in the future. Now, the reason I read that quote is, I think one thing that this story shows is that Amazon Publishing is growing, and, you know, it's got Dean Koontz and other authors, so that in the early days, I don't think anybody at a library would be complaining because they couldn't get Amazon Publishing books, because there just weren't that many and that it wasn't that significant. So one thing you can see in the fact that there is a petition drive, an uproar, how come these books aren't available to libraries, is the increasing role that Amazon Publishing is playing in the book industry. And that pleases me, because they're, in my opinion, they're doing ebooks right, they're pricing them reasonably, and from people like Dean Koontz and others, we've heard they're treating authors really well. I think they're a really positive force in the industry. So if they are, making that kind of an impact, it makes sense that how they're handling libraries would really matter to people, and it's generating some heat. I ran into kind of an odd reaction from Amazon when I was pressing on this, and I've had such great relations with Amazon Publishing, interviewed so many of their authors, and I'm a total fan. So I kind of pushed back quite a little bit, and then I just backed off, and I just imagined that something like this was in the works. And I can understand why they wouldn't have been talking about it, because when you're putting together a deal this important with an important partner, if as details slip out, there are plenty of people that would hope this fails. I mean, if Amazon comes out looking like it made a really creative and positive partnership with somebody on the behalf of libraries, that could make the Big Five look bad, and their continued squeezing of the libraries in terms of what they're charging. So, and American Library Association. Anyway, the industry, let's just say, has a lot of respect for Amazon, but there are a lot of players that are not there rooting for their success in something like this. Therefore, if you're going to negotiate a new partnership, it's pretty understandable that you wouldn't be announcing what you're talking about on the Kindle Chronicles or elsewhere. But in any event, I'll be in touch with the folks I know at Amazon Publishing, and hopefully if there's something that comes out, you'll hear about it here as soon as you hear about it anywhere else. I think it's a pretty positive development. I'm excited about it. Second news story I want to tell you about is Echo frames. So these are the eyeglasses that have Alexa built in. They are now available. You don't have to have an invitation to get them. So you can go in. I just checked, and you can pre-order them now for release on December 10th. This is actually a second generation of Echo frames, and they're a little more expensive. The day one version, which was sort of the beta version that I saw in Seattle, was being offered at $180 by invitation only. The upgraded version is $250. They are available in classic black, horizon blue, modern turquoise, kind of the old-fashioned eyeglass frames. And they've been updated. There are some things that has better battery life, apparently, and there is something that you can adjust the speakers. So instead of just having an open ear speaker, which the first generation had, and Darlene, when I listen to them, she hears she sort of hears what I'm listening to, but she can't really hear it. It's irritating to her to hear it. I think they might have addressed that because now you can automatically adjust the volume based on how loud the surroundings are. So if you're in the house, maybe the volume gets kind of lower. Battery up to 40% longer. And these new ones, if you put them upside down, they power down after 3 seconds. That's handy. I've made the mistake of putting them down when a podcast was playing, and they just keep playing indefinitely while they're sitting there by the bedside. I heard an interesting comment from Dave Slusher of the Evil Genius Chronicles podcast, who has been trying the Echo frames. He's a fan of them, but he said he actually just uses them as Bluetooth speakers, that he's not actually summoning Alexa a lot when he's wearing them. And I agree. I like wearing them. If I walk to the beach and I'm going to be alone, I listen to a podcast or the Beach Boys. I might ask, what's the weather going to be? When's low tide? But the Alexa aspect of it isn't really the way I'm using it. I'm just using it because it's very handy to hear without having something in my ears like AirPods. And I did decide not to ride my bike with them because when I was riding along thinking, I can hear through my ears, that's when I get into an accident at Old Orchard Beach that luckily I wasn't badly hurt. So I'm not using them riding bikes, but I use them walking around. I think that there's some problems with it because it can be distancing. Like just today, we were walking to the beach, Darlene and I and Deb, and I was listening to, I guess, a podcast, maybe the Beach Boys, and they can't tell if I'm listening to something or if I'm just ignoring them. And that's a bad kind of confusion to have. So, if Darlene now understands them enough that if she asks me something and I tap once on the right side of the glasses, that means I'm turning them off and I can hear them. But you have to use a device like this in a way that doesn't get in the middle of your human relationships. That said, I like them a lot, and I think that this upgraded version of them will be interesting. There was one other day one product that was announced at the same time. The day one was sort of, these are beta, invitation only. They're trying them out. And it was a ring that you could talk to. I was able to try it at a demo called the Echo Loop. Well, apparently that one didn't get much traction, and they're discontinuing it. If you were lucky enough to get an invitation and you bought one, they say that it'll still work, and they'll continue to support it and update it. So there's going to be a small group of people with these Alexa rings that no one else can get. That's kind of cool to think about. But one of the products made it, and one of them didn't. And if the frames really take off, then the overall day one initiative will certainly have been a success. I've got a tech tip for you involving covers for the latest edition of the Oasis, which is my Kindle of choice. I really love it. I saw in Reddit, in the r/Kindle Reddit, a post by u/bkirby88, and it was a picture of a new Kindle Oasis cover. It's the Ayotu, Ayotu Skin Touch case for the Oasis. And $25, I bought one. I thought, well, I'd like to try this out. It has a nice feel. Let's see, where is it? I've got it right here next to me. Kind of a leathery feel, and it attaches to the back of the Oasis with a little round device that sticks to the case of the Oasis. So when you put it on, it's actually a magnetic holder. So once that fastener has fastened the little, it's actually kind of an oblong shape to the back of my Oasis, then there's a magnet in it, and it just pulls the back of the cover to it. So there's a nice, easy clasp. This makes it easy to take the cover on and take the cover off. The case that I had before was the Fintie case, and that one is available. Let's see, that's a little cheaper. I think it's $23, maybe $20. Anyway, it's less expensive, and its advantage is you can make it turns into a stand. So in other words, if you're reading your Oasis at a table or coffee shop, there's a sort of little origami action in the back, and it will end up standing on its own. The Ioto one doesn't do that. The other difference is that the Fintie one covers the whole back of the Oasis, but that means that there's sort of a panel that sticks out. It's not a flat surface. And the Ioto one, it's a flush surface, but it leaves part of the Oasis metal back bare. So you don't have, you've got sort of the soft case, and then you've got this kind of vertical pattern piece of the bare Kindle. I don't know which of those two I like. They each have their advantages. I think all in all, I probably would go with the Fintie because of the stand aspect. But just aesthetically, this new one is very appealing. It's just kind of sleek, and it comes in 8 different solid covers. I chose navy blue. The Fintie comes in 8 designs, some of them solid covers, and the one I have is a picture of a library. So, but these are really affordable. Both of them, $25 and under, and I'll have links to them in the show notes. So if you're looking to kind of freshen up your latest Oasis with a nice cover that won't set you back too much money, these are 2 really good choices. Time now for the interview. Adam Leeb is CEO and co-founder of Astrohaus, the creator of distraction-free writing tools. I've spoken frequently here about how much I enjoy the company's latest product, the Freewrite Traveler, a retro futuristic keyboard with very limited editing tools, the better to draw out a first draft of writing without distractions. So far, I have written and published 2 pieces in Medium that began life as Traveler drafts. So I'm a believer, and I was grateful to Nicole Sun, marketing manager for Astrohaus, for helping me to schedule a chance to talk with Adam. I reached him by Skype on Tuesday, December 1st. That was when Detroit was recording its first snow of the season, quite a contrast with the weather here on Sanibel Island in Florida. Here is our conversation. First of all, I've had fun using your baby here. I love this thing, and I've had some experiments that I just really enjoyed doing it, drafting something and then getting it edited and then putting it on Medium and sort of tracking the birth cycle of a piece of writing, starting with this. And so we'll hope we get a chance to talk about that. But I read that your sort of creation moment happened when a friend, I think it was at a Detroit incubator, talked about a software that they were using for distraction. And can you say a little bit more about that? I love these moments where an idea hits, and next thing you know, you've got 10 years of dogged work to try to make it come into reality. But what do you remember about that first thought or inspiration that was triggered by your friend that was doing something to control distraction?
Yeah, the conversation was with my friend at the time and now co-founder, Patrick. He's not with the company anymore, but he was working on it for 4 years with me. The initial conversation was one of many free-flowing conversations that we would have just, across the table. And he happened to be telling me about distraction-free software that he was using just as part of his essaying process. And that was super interesting to me because that specific software, it had disabled the backspace key. And I just thought that was totally wild. Like, I'd never heard of anything. Like, why would you do that? And so that led us down this process of talking about writing process and writing philosophy. And there's this whole idea and fairly well-tread path of doing the drafting separate from the editing. And that's
now, he was writing essays at the time and using this no backspace software in drafting a first draft of an essay about something?
He's a software developer, but he studied political science and was always just really fascinated with just what's happening in politics. And so he just liked to write essays about politics or whatever he was feeling, and that was just something he would do in his free time.
Huh. And this software he was using without the backspace, was that like a word processor that had been tweaked for the purpose of not allowing any editing?
Yeah, something like that. I actually don't know that much about that specific software, but there's what I've come to find out is that there's a large suite of software out there that's designed for distraction-free writing, and some of them have more to them than others, but generally speaking, they kind of are like this very simplified word processing environment, whether it's in the cloud or a piece of desktop software. It's kind of doesn't matter. But that software, just that one specifically, disabled the backspace key in the hope that it would help you with flow.
Now, and when you were seeing the power of that and getting interested in the sort of the theory of writing and distraction, did you pretty quickly go to designing a piece of hardware, an actual product that would fall into this category as opposed to another piece of software?
Yeah, that's where my mind goes because my background is as a mechanical engineer and product designer, and I just love products in general, and I love products and I also love process. And so, timing is a huge piece of this. This conversation happened to come about when I was really burnt out at what I was doing at the time. And I had been sort of looking for a physical project to work on, not so much like another product, but really just a project. And it just had all of these pieces that I was super, super interested in. One being e-ink. I've always been a humongous fan of the Kindle. And I've bought multiple Kindles and I've purchased them as gifts and, told other people to buy them. I just think they're one of the best products, period. And then mechanical keyboards and just, there were all these different pieces that were sort of floating around in my mind. And when we were talking about distraction-free software and how useful this specific software was for him as a software developer and someone that's, very tech savvy, but then, took extra lengths to basically limit the features on his, expensive computer. There was something there that I thought was interesting. And I'm like, okay, well, people are using this distraction-free software and other distraction-free software just to get this really pure writing experience. Maybe we could kind of combine these cool bits of hardware and then put it into a new device that's super focused, super specialized, and it sort of is no longer the compromise that all these other things are. And it's really just this dedicated distraction-free writing tool. And it's, some people look at our original product and think like, oh, these guys, like, they really just tried to reinvent the typewriter. When actually, it was really a modern developer. We were much more inspired by distraction-free software, and then sort of like putting that into a modern, coupling modern hardware with that distraction-free software.
We're talking about maybe around 2010. Was that when sort of you'd be having these conversations with your friend that led to the Kickstarter for Freewrite in 2014 and the rest of the story?
Well, no, actually, it was in 2014.
Oh, okay.
So right. The conversation was, I don't know, sometime in probably the spring of 2014, and then we were working on something else at the time, and then after our current things sort of fizzled, we found some time over the summer. I sort of convinced him, like, hey, man, I think this idea, like, it's just stuck with me. I think it's super interesting. Like, maybe we should just put it together and, that's it. Like, that was as far as we thought. Like, maybe we just make a prototype and, put it out on the internet and see if people think it's interesting.
I'm interested that you mentioned the Kindle because, the Kindle came out in 2007. So by this time, the Kindle had been out for about 7 years. And I was really drawn to the genius of the Kindle as a dedicated long-form reader, taking advantage of the e-ink screen and limiting, you can't tweet, you can't do this. It's about reading the book. And in this period, were you making any connections with doing something distraction-free, dedicated purpose for a writer that echoed or had any kind of a rhyme with what Amazon was doing for readers with the Kindle?
Not before 2014. It was really that first conversation that was in 2014 that was really the kickoff to this whole idea or concept. Because I had no clue that there was even a distraction-free concept within writing. Like I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm not even a writer. I'm not a writer myself. I mean, maybe that's important to mention. I'm just sort of like I said, a process enthusiast. And obviously I've written stuff because we all have to write stuff, and I wrote stuff in college and in high school and have written some blog posts, but I mean, I'm not a writer. I definitely I don't subscribe. So I really didn't. I never thought about that because I had no clue into writing process. And actually, part of the reason that I was super interested in this whole idea was that I thought I did reflect back on my youth and thinking of how difficult it was for me to write essays when I was younger, and how I would have felt if I would have known that there was a different process that I could have tried. Going instead of using Word and just editing as I go and doing this paragraph method or whatever, someone could have told me, hey, like, just draft, don't worry about, the editing, like do that later. You just need to get words on the page and just keep going and maybe rewrite it and don't worry about it and just write and write and write. And that was not part of the curriculum. So that was also something that struck me.
Yeah, if that had been available, you might have become a writer. Who knew? The bar was pretty high to, quote, become a writer in those days, because you had to, everything you did, you were sort of, having topic sentences. And that's my experience in growing up. And when I first got introduced to morning pages and free writing and writing without punctuation and all this stuff, it just seemed like I didn't know you could even do that. I didn't know that you were allowed to write that freely. So it was a really powerful I guess it was an evolution of just the way people thought about the process and the craft of writing.
Yeah, I mean, even you just saying topic sentence right there, that just like struck like some memory I had. I haven't heard that phrase in so long, but yeah, like, you had to make these topic sentences, and then you had to have like, I don't even remember, like three and four, like I don't know, like I don't even remember the whole structure, but there was so much structure that they taught us, and I don't know if that was bad, but. Now knowing that there are other ways, I mean, that's really empowering.
I'm fascinated because you have a lot of transparency about that you're not a writer, and yet you're creating this tool for writers. And I don't think you need to apologize for it, because I think that it gives you sort of a beginner's mind, and you're kind of coming into this very active community of writers. And you've said you've met thousands of writers at this point in conferences and everything. And I'm curious in sort of your observer status with no kind of dog in the fight, as opposed, if you'd had an MFA and you'd been in a certain kind of writing and a certain kind of approach, you're free of all that. Have you noticed any discernible camps within the writing community that affect the design of Freewrite and then Traveler, that on this basic point of what's the best way to do a draft and what's the best way to battle distraction? You point out that every writer has some strategy for distraction, but do you have any kind of nicknames for writers who do it this way versus writers who do it that way? And what are kind of the tribes that you've identified in this huge nation of writers that you're serving with your product?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, for our purposes, it's really as simple as the people that get it and the people that don't. And it's very simplistic to break it down that way, but it's and especially when we first launched in 2014, I mean, part of the reason that this came into existence was that it really struck a nerve. And from just the title of the original product being a distraction-free writing tool, just the title, and then this image that was sort of this retro futuristic typewriter-y thing, that really grabbed people. And so how do you, there were people that were, journalists that were writing about the mere concept of, do we need a distraction-free writing tool? is this the end of, our ability to take our attention, like manage our own attention? Like, I mean, people were sort of writing these, really extreme reactions to even just the product concept. And so, fast forward, we have less of those conversations. Back then, I'd say it was more common that the people that got it, like, really got it. And the people that didn't get it, like, really didn't get it. Like, they not only did they not shrug it off, they were like, this is the dumbest thing in the world. And this is like, I'm sad for humanity that this exists. And now it's more like a lot more people get it, and other people are just like, okay, whatever, And so I think what I've learned, and you sort of mentioned this, is that every writer has some form of distraction-free, like, method. And some people write longhand, some people write, with typewriters. I mean, and that's sort of something that I learned about writing process. And it, at the end of the day, it's like whatever works for you. I think some people think, because we have a very specific tool that has a very specific design and a very specific workflow, that we are telling people that this is how you are supposed to write. And like, I just don't look at it like that at all. Like, I really just saw people that were interested in distraction-free writing and that were writing a certain way that I thought was sort of inefficient, meaning like people really like, we heard this from tons of people, like, I really like using a typewriter. I really like writing longhand, but it's slow. And I know that I have to then digitize it at some point. And that was a very common piece of feedback that I would hear during the development process. And okay, well, if that's the thing, like, you like this very intentional, very simplistic input style, but you don't want to have to think about, like, then converting your documents to digital, and you don't want to have to deal with paper, and you don't have to deal with, okay, well, now all of a sudden, like, our product makes a lot of sense, right? Because the product is for those people. It's not for everybody. That's fine. And so I think that's the difference of, me as a product designer coming into this, building something. I don't in any way feel like I have to build the perfect writing tool for everyone. I just feel like I'm just going to build this really great product that for this certain group of people are going to think it's the best thing ever. And for everyone outside of that group, like, they may think it's dumb, or they may not understand it, or they might just, like, it might not fit their writing style, and that's totally okay.
The other thing that's changed since you started it, because when you started it, there's this period where the people who get it are going to love it, buy it. But now, have you sold close to 10,000 of the two machines, or 8,000 or something?
Yeah, something. I mean, we've sold a lot.
Yeah, well, thousands. So at this point,
thousands, yeah.
Those people now, they're the ones that get it enough to buy it. Are they in any way arguing among themselves and giving you conflicting advice about where to go next? Does some of them want to be able to move through the document and they would like to do a little editing, maybe a spell checker, and others are purists and they're saying, oh, don't touch it, take away the backspace key. Do you sort of have to govern a nation that you created of writers that were attracted to this tool and take a mixed set of opinions about it forward as you update the firmware or talk about a successor or anything like that?
A little bit, but the thing is, it's very easy to get distracted by the vocal minority. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we all do this. We see sort of emails and comments coming into the chat, and people will say things, and someone will say something, and you'll be like, yeah, like, maybe that's a good idea, but then literally it's one person out of 10,000 or 20,000 or 50,000 or whatever it is. And you're like, wait, like, only one person wants this. Is it really that good of an idea? Like, maybe it's good for them. But I think that the hard thing that people, and I don't blame anyone, like, this is just, we're in different roles, like, as the producer versus the consumer. Like, we can't design something that's perfect for one person,
right?
And we have to constantly be balancing what's a feature that will improve the overall experience for the majority of people. So, product design, I mean, that's also, that's my skill set. And that's something that we, have to just take really seriously in how we incorporate new features. And I think one of the hardest things also for people to understand is that, and this, for other product designers as well, something that we have to remind ourselves is that a feature for you might be an area of confusion for someone else. And so even if that thing actually does improve it for you, there might be all these other people that get confused, and maybe their experience is now diluted in some way, or, just less vibrant. And so we have to be really careful about just adding things because we can, or because even a group of people want it. So we're very deliberate, and honestly, like, we have a small team, and so it's not like we have an overabundance of time and energy to just develop tons and tons of features. Like, most of the time we're trying to just make our existing features work better. So it's not something that I have to struggle with that much. Like, we are, I'd much rather fix bugs than add new features.
Well, you mentioned the digital part of it, which is genius to be able to draft in a very free way. And my process was, my main outlet now is publishing on Medium, the platform for essays, different kinds of things. So I think I just take it from the postbox upload, which happens automatically as I'm writing on the Traveler. Select all, copy, and then drop it into Medium, and it's formatted just the right thing, and then I'm editing it in Medium. But is that maybe you could describe other sort of popular workflows, that examples of people when they write on the Traveler or the Freewrite, where do they go using? I mean, you've got Evernote, you've got Dropbox, you've got Google Drive. There's all these sort of paths that you have created. But what are some kind of common ways that people will take what they create here, get it to someplace where they can edit it, and then do whatever they're going to do with it in the world?
I think your workflow is pretty common, and honestly, what we tried. And then that was the intent. And even though we sync with Dropbox, Evernote, and Google Drive, they're really meant to be an archive of your documents, not so much a place where you would do the rest of your editing and publishing. Because, again, those are really just cloud drives. Now Dropbox has Dropbox Paper, and Google obviously has Google Docs or whatever Docs. And so, but I think because the device is really meant to be a one-way tool, we suggest, and that was always part of the process. You do your drafting on the device, it syncs up automatically. It's just there within Dropbox, Evernote, or Google Drive, and then you can copy and paste that into Scrivener or Word or Ulysses, any of the programs that you want to do, or WordPress or Medium. And I think all those programs, they're great. And I don't think we don't have the time or resources to try and replicate like a Word or even a Dropbox Paper. And so that's fine. Let's let those guys and do what they do. And also that's what people are comfortable with. If people want to use Scrivener, that's totally fine, and they should. And so there's no reason that you can't just import that docx into Scrivener and then go from there.
And when I write in Traveler and it ends up in the cloud at Postbox, is that document at Postbox, is that a docx? Is that a WordX file?
It's just a text file.
It's just a text file, okay.
It's a text file, but then we process it to be a docx or a PDF or a text file.
The program isn't doing it itself. The user would make that transition from the text file to whatever they want?
We do it automatically.
Oh, you do it automatically?
Yeah. So if you sync it with Dropbox, it'll sync as a docx file.
Oh, okay.
If you sync it to Evernote, it'll just be a text file inside of Evernote. But actually, we do process Markdown. Are you familiar with Markdown?
No.
So Markdown is just a simple syntax for formatting. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was really created by bloggers. And so, for example, like if you put stars around a word, I always forget which one it is, but I think it gets bolded, or italicized, or you put double stars, that does something, or if you put a hash in front of the something, it becomes a title. And so it's just a really super simple plain text way to mark up. They call it Markdown, but mark down your document, and then we actually process that automatically. So you can try it, and if you look up Markdown and start using it, and then, for example, you can hit the send key, it'll send you a PDF and it'll be fully formatted.
Great. When you said that Dropbox and the others are archives, I had a moment of panic because I had written a draft of an essay, and I was playing around with the shred feature, which you explained in a tutorial you did, and you very carefully say, look, shred is permanent. You actually have to type in shred in order to get something to disappear, not just. And I mistakenly shredded this draft. I think, oh rats! When I talk to him, can I ask Adam does he have a secret copy of my file or whatever? But then I realized I was playing around, and I ended up going to where I was linking it with Dropbox, and there it was in Dropbox. So when I shred, it's really only shredding from the Traveler and the Postbox site. But if I've kicked it off to one of those other three, then it's still there.
Yeah, and there's only so much control we have, because even Dropbox and Google Drive and Evernote, they all work a little bit differently, but they all have like their own deleted files area and abilities to recover their own deleted files. And so we don't go that deep. I don't even know if we can from an API perspective. So we just do it from Postbox and the device side.
I kind of loved it when I first heard about you that you're based in Detroit. You're not in New York. You're not in Silicon Valley. And I understand you're a small staff and you're pretty well distributed. But your headquarters is Detroit. Is there a Silicon auto drive place, or does Detroit have a gathering of people like you that are doing startups? What's it like to be doing a tech startup in Detroit?
Yeah, there is. There's a community of people that are doing startups. Not too many hardware startups, but there's a range of startups. I mean, there's a group of people in Ann Arbor, related to the University of Michigan. There's people in Detroit. And there's a group of people here. There's offshoots of Quicken Loans and Dan Gilbert's sort of what they call the family of companies. So he has Detroit Venture Partners. There's also Ludlow Ventures and a couple other venture funds around, and they're investing in different types of things. So yeah, I mean, there's a community here. It's obviously smaller than New York or Boston or San Francisco, but there's a community here, and I've spent a lot of time. I used to live in New York, and the company was in New York for a few years. But we started in Detroit, we moved to New York, and now we're back in Detroit. And actually, all of our full-time staff is in Detroit.
One of the things that this sort of loops back to what we were talking about, the philosophy of writing, and I think you mentioned it. There's the advantage of getting the draft out in that sort of more fluid way than we were taught with the topic sentence and everything. And then the other thing is the authenticity of the voice. And this is something that I had an MFA in poetry at Bennington, and it seemed like so much work in that setting went to finding your voice, writing in a way that wasn't sort of imitative of somebody else. And my experience just so far using the Traveler in drafting a couple of these medium essays is when I write it and I'm not looking at the screen, I'm just sort of getting it out there. When I look at it and I start editing it, it seems to me it's got the kind of voice that I'm usually aiming for in my writing. It seems more natural, less contrived. In your discussions with writers, and you're sort of thinking about the benefits of this tool, what have you learned about voice? It's sort of a abstract, difficult thing to get your mind around, but it's like if I hear a writer who's strong reading their work, that's the best way to describe it. There's a real voice there, and a writer who sort of, just isn't quite there yet. It's like a muffled voice. It's like the voice isn't clear yet. But have you had any thoughts on that part of the benefits of using this tool?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I haven't heard that from so many people, but that's something that I personally experience very strongly. And I found that we have a web app called Sprinter. So you can go to sprinter.getfreewrite.com, and it uses the same postbox backend, and you can do sprints in that little app. And while it's
what does that mean, a sprint?
Just a writing draft. It's the same sort of idea as writing in Traveler or Freewrite, but it's not.
Oh, you can do it on your computer.
Yeah, you can do it right in the browser.
Yeah.
So it's not purely distraction free. There's a little bit there's a goal orientation to it to help people stay focused, but it does prevent, you can backspace, but there's no arrow keys again. And something that I've found in writing is that when I'm trying to draft, like, let's say a long email, if I jump into Sprinter or use one of the devices, I find that, one, it goes so much faster. Two, I'll then, do the typical thing where I'll write my draft, I'll go into Word, start editing it, and I'm thinking that it's getting better. I'm clarifying this point. I'm, this, and then I read it and I compare it to the original one. I'm like, this is so much worse. And it's always because there's something, and I think it's because of the voice as well. There's something about letting yourself just continue, and that one-to-one sort of input to output, like you have this mental thought and you're just outputting it directly, instead of when you reread it, you're thinking, I forgot about this. And it's like, well, your brain didn't think of that initially. Like, why do you need to know it now? You only know it because you've read the whole thing. It's like, no, that is part of telling the story. It's like you're only telling as much information as you need to know, nothing more, nothing less. And that's how I think about it. And so I have found, it's the voice is just so much stronger when you do this drafting method. And it's always been something that not only does the Freewrite help you write faster, but I agree with you. Like, the voice, I think, is so much stronger, and I think that might even be a better, piece of, a better benefit of using one of the devices. It's just you get that voice, and then you realize, like, oh wow, like this is a much more coherent argument or conversation that is being portrayed on the page. That's been my experience as well. It's funny though, I haven't heard it in that way from so many people, but I definitely experienced that.
Yeah, I suspect that the people that love it and your evangelists out there, I wouldn't be surprised if they've had that experience, even if they're maybe not articulating it as much, because it's sort of ecstatic. I mean, when you find your voice and you have a chance to put in some writing and share with other people, it's that's why people become writers, because there's joy in it, in addition to, for a very few, a livelihood.
Right. Yeah, and I think sometimes it's hard for me to separate like my cognitive biases, because a lot of our press reviews, they'll write their review on the device, part of the review, like it's that's like their catchy thing and it makes sense, right? And there is something to it that, like, I don't know, when I read them, I'm like, yeah, it flows much differently than you typically read like a tech review or something like that. And I think I find it very enjoyable. I don't know. I think there's something to that for sure.
That's a genius part of your marketing advantage, is that to the extent that people are writing about your product on your product, they're going to be writing honestly and fluidly. It's going to have a sort of a built-in advantage over some other kind of product.
Yeah.
Well, how old are you?
I am 35.
35. So you're creating these cool products for writers. You're talking to a lot of writers, and I think you mentioned in one conversation I saw that you are now doing some writing. If you were to fast forward to my age, I'm 70, and somewhere along the line, you're using these products, you're finding that you do have a strong writer's voice about some topic, maybe technology, maybe Detroit, who knows. But can you imagine what kind of a writer you would dream of being through the sort of unpredictable path that you think back to when you were your age, always saying, well, I'm not a writer. Well, what if by the time you were 70, you were a writer? What would you be writing, and how would you like to, what do you think your voice would be like?
That's a new one. Okay. I think there's definitely some topics that I've thought a lot more about potentially expounding upon, whether they're, entrepreneurial subjects like, how do you create hardware, product design. There's a lot that I've learned over the last some years about those topics. And I think that I have a view that's it's not easily found. I'm sure other people have it, but it's not easily found. And so there's things like that I'd love to write about. And I certainly have them in the back of my head as though, these are the things that I'll write about someday. I don't know though. I think it would be really cool if I could get myself to write fiction, because the way I look at fiction, and I'm a reader of fiction, but I think of fiction as something that's just like this impossible, impenetrable thing. And it probably isn't. Anyone can write fiction. Writing good fiction, that's a whole nother thing. But I do think of it as something that's just like so far outside of my skill set that it would be cool if I gave it a shot.
Well, you've got the tool.
I need to, make the commitment. It's funny because, so many of our customers and community are, are participants in NaNoWriMo, and we've been. And that's
the national. What is that?
National Novel Writing Month, which just finished yesterday. That's November. So that's a huge portion of our I shouldn't say huge portion, but a big portion of our customer base are also people that are affiliated with NaNoWriMo, or participants or former participants. And every year I always think to myself, maybe I should work on something, but I haven't done it yet. Which is embarrassing actually. So maybe next year.
That's right. Well, each year it'll come around and tempt you. So at some point you'll just say yes.
I know. It's tough though, because, well, I'll just give you my excuses. We have going into November as a company that sells stuff. There's just so much going on, right? We're going into the holiday season, and we want to make sure that, our product is ready, and our shipment and fulfillment and customer service and all these things. There's just so many things that are always going on right in November. And so it's a bad excuse, but that's my excuse.
Well, let's finish up with, I think Nicole had said that you've got a current special, $170 off on the Traveler. Is that likely to still be offered Friday when the show goes up this week, or what's the latest holiday deal that you're offering, and how can people get it?
Yeah, so Traveler is $429 right now, and it'll be like that for a little while. We'll be doing some other promos over the holidays. I'm not 100% sure when this is going out, but I'd say if people are interested, they should go to our website, getfreewrite.com, sign up for our newsletter, and we'll be sending out some deals. And we don't do a lot of deals, though, I'll be honest. And we have a real problem with going out of inventory, and we will definitely go out of stock on Traveler. So if you are serious and are interested and want it sooner than later, I would highly suggest getting it. And then that's it. So getfreewrite.com.
Cool. I have been speaking with Adam Leeb, CEO and co-founder of Astrohaus, creator of the Traveler dedicated writing tool, a really wonderful gadget. Thanks a lot, Adam.
Thank you, Len.
That's it for this week. My guest next week will be Jennifer Lonoff Schiff, author of the Sanibel Island Mystery series. She's a local here, has migrated down here for most of the year, and she has written a series of 6 mystery novels. I think they all involve murders here on Sanibel, which I thought was a pretty peaceful place. I've read the first one. I'm starting to read. I've read the 5th one, and I've started to read the first one. They're very engaging. They're cozy mysteries and nicely written. I think she had a business reporting background, some similar overlap with me. I think she's got family in Cambridge. So we will be meeting by Skype. It would have been tempting to try to meet at a coffee shop here, but I don't know how we would have navigated being 6 feet away from the same microphone. And it's going to be fun to learn some Sanibel lore and also get the story of this quite successful series of mysteries that she's been publishing with all kinds of local lore about shelling and the different restaurants here on Sanibel. So I'm going to have a lot of fun doing that. I think I am going to be talking with her on Tuesday, and that'll be on next week's show. Been swimming just about every day here. The water's a little chilly, maybe 72, but sometimes it's rough. But man, a half an hour of sliding through those waves as smoothly as I can, it just is incredibly invigorating. The beach is about a 10-minute walk from the house, and I bought at Amazon, I bought a swimmer's buoy. It's a very bright orange, kind of a bubble that I attach to my waist. So when I'm kind of disappearing in the waves, Darlene or Deb can see me, and they don't have the sense of panic of just not being able to see me when they're walking along. And I'm never over my head, but it's good to have someone spotting me when I'm swimming in the open water. And we're settling in after 2 weeks. We're not exactly natives here, but it's becoming a really wonderful place to explore and settle into. We're feeling a lot of gratitude. That's it for the Kindle Chronicles from Sanibel, Florida. Thanks very much for listening. Bye.